Welcome to the Building Code, episode 124. I'm Zach Witovich here with Charley Birtwistle.
I'm Charley Birtwistle.
I already said that.
Just wanted to double down, make sure people know. We're getting pretty late in our episode count. Like, we're kind of veterans at this now.
At this point, you'd think that we'd be better at this. No, we gotta be confident. We're doing fantastic.
Yeah, maybe we don't say how many episodes we've had. Let people think that we're like first time temporary podcast announcers for the rest of our careers.
This is my one goal in my entire, this is why I came to Buildertrend.
Well, you do 2 podcasts.
Not bragging or anything.
So, like, if anyone has an excuse, it's me. This is like my one time I come in here.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're doing podcasts left and right.
Yeah, check out The Better Way, where I bring on other guest hosts with me. And then Charley and I are here on the Building Code. Charley, who are we bringing on today?
We got Bill Gray of LMC Building, all the way from New Zealand. So I think it's about 9 a.m. over there.
Does that make it like midnight our time? No, it doesn't. I'm just...
I don't think so. 9 a.m. It will be the next day too. So it'll be Friday morning. We're stuck here in Thursday.
Time zones are wild.
But yeah, he's going to be talking about some of the challenges they face over in New Zealand, primarily earthquakes. So,
is that a big problem in New Zealand?
Compared to Nebraska, a huge problem. I mean, they get like thousands of earthquakes a year, I think.
We'll have to ask him about just the amount of earthquakes. Like, I'm just curious. I mean, they are down on the Ring of Fire in the Pacific Ocean, so there's a lot of things happening there. So we'll have to kind of get into like what he has to do in order to prevent these things from destroying their buildings, I guess.
Literally saving lives. That's quite a bit of pressure to put on a home builder.
And it kind of ties into some of the things even going on in the United States, which is probably the inspiration of our episode today, is just natural disasters in building. We've had a few guests that talked about green builders, Bob Deeks, a few episodes back, where we really got into like net zero homes. And this is kind of the other side, which is the Earth's going to do what it wants to do. We had that condo collapse down in Florida. Right. That was more structural, but you know, when one of the things you think about is all the different places you go, they all have to consider kind of the environment that they're actually living in.
And I'm super excited to talk to Bill on just how they like account for that. And obviously, yeah, right now, timely topic. And we actually do have a couple links that we'll drop in the show notes. They'll be, once again, they're from theconstructiondive.com, which is a great website if you guys want to go out and get some news articles. But the collapse of that apartment building down in Miami obviously has sparked, a lot of controversy about the building code and like should, these buildings, are they safe to live in? And another article we have kind of talks about historically some of these giant collapses and building failures they've had and kind of how they produce changes on how do they learn from it, what sort of new materials come about, and how do they kind of advance and, make sure that something like that doesn't happen in the future. So, luckily in the States that doesn't happen very often, but excited to listen to Bill talk about, something that happens kind of daily over there for them and how they build with it.
Yeah, well, let's get him on here. Bill Gray, welcome to the Building Code. Bill, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Well, that's pretty scary. I was just working it out the other day that I've been building for over 45 years. So I'm the old one around.
Got a little experience then, huh?
I don't know if it's experience. It's probably a bit long in the tooth, really. But yeah, no, I've sort of been in and out of the building industry, for that long. Mainly residential in both Australia and New Zealand here. So it's been pretty interesting, what with earthquakes and stuff like that. We've learned a lot of stuff, and there's been a lot of changes. So that's what I've been doing for the last 46 years.
Absolutely. So, and I know we're super excited to talk about kind of some of the building challenges that you have, with the earthquakes and how you account for some of those. Before we get into that, though, maybe tell us a little bit about the company that you're at currently. So LMC Building, is that correct? How'd that kind of get started, how it's grown? How'd you kind of find yourself there?
Yeah, well, I came back from Australia back in 2015, and we shifted into this small town here of 2,500 odd people. And I banged into Luke and Nicola Chambers run LMC Building. and they started back in 2007. So he was a one-man band back then, or one-man, one-woman band, and now they've grown it up to about there's 10 of us. So there's a couple of apprentices and 8 chippies working out and about. So,
what kind of construction are you primarily doing out there in New Zealand? Are you new home builder? Or are they multifamily? Just give a little background about like the type of construction that your company's currently kind of focusing on.
We're mainly residential, but we are doing, when I say residential, that's single houses. This is a tourist town here, so there's a lot of holiday homes getting built, but also there's a lot of people moving into the area just because it's such a nice place to live. We've got the sea right next door, and 2 k's away on the other side we've got snow and mountains, so it's pretty cool.
We're from Nebraska, so we've got cornfields and flat land, so I think we know who's out on top on this comparison.
Yeah, no, it's pretty special. We've got guys surfing on one side and guys skiing on the other, so yeah, we've got a good setup here.
All right, we keep talking about taking the podcast on the road. I know where we're going to be lobbying to go to. We're going to come visit you, Bill. I hope you don't mind.
Yeah. So as I was saying, we're doing mainly houses, but we do a fair bit of school work. Like the high school here got pretty badly hit in the earthquake, so we've been we've fixed up all that sort of stuff, and we've carried on doing some major refits for them as well. So yeah, pretty interesting work.
For sure. And you've mentioned that a couple times now. So the entire island of New Zealand is pretty much like an earthquake zone. How does building in that environment differ from what people would expect? So like, what are some of the experiences? You just mentioned the school was hit pretty hard. What are the sort of things you kind of having to account for when a natural disaster like an earthquake occurs?
Back in 2010, 2011, there was a major earthquake just down the road, about 100 miles from here, and it took out most of Christchurch, which is a city close to here. Basically they had to demolish roughly 9,000 homes, and there were 170,000 buildings damaged. Wow. So, wow. Yeah, she was pretty full on, I can tell you. We so up to that point, there wasn't really most of the regulations around the earthquakes were based on earthquakes that had happened way back in 1931, so a long time ago, right, even before I was born. And so once this major earthquake happened, suddenly there were a lot of changes regarding the regulations on how we built. And then, we've just had another one, 2016, which affected us right here. So, yeah, it wiped out most of the infrastructure, like roads. We were stuck here in Kaikoura for basically 6 weeks before we could actually get out.
Wow.
Didn't help that there was sea and mountains, and so
see. That's what you pay for. Yeah. You got to come to where the cornfields are. Nothing to worry about.
Yeah. So, they're pretty interesting things to be a part of, I can tell you.
What is the frequency? I'm just curious. How often are earthquakes happening in your area, your region? I mean, is it yearly? Is it every decade? I mean, what's the kind of expected? I know you can never really predict it, but the frequency of when these things are going to happen.
Well, there's about 150,000 earthquakes happen a year. Now, when I say that, most of them you can't feel them.
Right. But so they're out there.
About 150 to 200 you feel.
Wow. So almost one a week? I mean, more or less?
Yeah. But only felt in various parts of the country. Yeah, so, right. It's not that we're all sitting here getting thumped every week.
Just the old earthquake, no big deal.
Yeah. Well, it does sort of get a little bit like that. But yeah, like these major ones. Well, like since I was born, I can only recall a couple where, when I was a kid, that you'd go, "Oh, there was an earthquake," but that was just a jolt. The one that hit Christchurch was it knocked it round, like it went for a minute or so, and then the one that hit here was, well, that was unbelievable. It was like 2 minutes of just all hell breaking loose. Basically, it happened just after midnight, and something woke me up, but I got up, and then for the next 2 minutes, I just watched this concrete floor look like a wave in a lake. That's how much of the concrete was going up and down, and everything that was above the above floor level landed on the floor. Yeah, she was a bit of a mess, and we just then there was nothing, and we just looked at the mess. Like there were houses damaged, roads damaged. It was just really devastation, you could say.
So where were you at when that was happening? Like, were you safe, or was there stuff collapsing all around you, or what was that kind of experience?
There was stuff collapsing all around me. I was stuck at the end of my bed, hanging on between the bed and the wall, just trying to stand up. And the earthquake was doing all it could to throw me on the ground, and that was virtually what was happening. Virtually from about 150 mile away, right through here, and then carrying right up the coast. So it was basically, they say that there was something like 22 different fault lines that unzipped at that time.
That's incredible. I'm like quickly moving up earthquakes on things I should worry about on my list of concerns.
Yeah. I couldn't believe how much concrete moved. It was just like, while one piece of the floor was staying down, the next bit seemed to be going up 2 meters, 200 millimeters, I guess a foot. But, while it was happening, you're guessing a lot of things.
Yeah. So what I'm curious about is, we want to kind of get into the regulations of earthquakes and how do you build for this, and what preventative measures. I mean, is there a level that the code kind of sets you at, where like if you get a 5.0 on the Richter scale, your house should maintain its structure, or is there, what's that process of like, what are the codes trying to prevent, and like how severe of an earthquake can the codes really mitigate the impacts of those earthquakes?
I guess the main thing to remember is that the building code, first and foremost, is trying to save lives. So then it's saving lives first, worry about the building second. And so a lot of the work that's been done around the regulations has been to make sure that the building stays up, giving people enough time to get out.
Right.
And also, if you can, minimise the damage of the building itself. So the regulations have really tightened up regarding bracing units and the use of like ply sheets and just even gypsum board for internal linings have become so that they screwed off in certain patterns to make sure that they stay on the wall despite what's going on. And the screws they may rip a line in the gypsum board, but they'll still stay on the wall, so it stops the wall from collapsing.
And
another thing too. Oh, sorry, carry on.
No, you go ahead.
I was just going to say that one of the big things that happened, and this might apply, I see a link you sent me regarding the building that collapsed I think it was down the bottom of the states there.
Yeah, in Florida, Miami.
Yeah, well, like we had a building collapse here in Christchurch on the first lot of earthquakes, and quite a few people were killed in that. And they did a lot of study into why that happened, and the main thing that they found was that the reinforcing steel through the concrete hadn't been taken right the way through columns, and so there's been a lot of changes regarding that, so that the reinforcing is actually all tied together rather than just sitting in there hoping that the building will stay up.
Yeah, that was a super interesting article. I know they had a quote in there talking about, just figuring out why these different things were happening and how to prevent them. The quote was like, you don't need to worry about a crack in the concrete, all concrete cracks. You need to worry about what caused the concrete and figuring out how to fix that problem. So as you think back, you'd mentioned you've been through a couple of these like pretty severe ones now. How do the changes to the building code, kind of come about? Do people learn a lot from these, big devastating natural disasters? And if so, what have been kind of some of the major shifts that you've seen over your time through some of these events that have, really improved the building code and helped, protect, lives in the future?
The main one would be that they have really improved on the concrete floors that poured. They've made what they call a rib raft floor, which is basically a foot, just over a foot thick, with polystyrene pods every 3 feet or so, and that allows for a raft or an actual beam to go through every 4 feet. I hope I'm explaining it well enough. Basically, the thing becomes a honeycombed effect type of concrete, which doesn't break up in earthquakes, and it's sitting on top of a compacted fill, so that in the event of an earthquake, it can move around without actually breaking up and the house falling over. And after an earthquake, these slabs can be jacked up or re-leveled so that they can, the house can be used still. Yeah. So there's been that one. And then we've got another issue here in New Zealand, and that's climate, with it being, we get some great winds come up straight from Antarctica, so we're all so it cools the place down pretty quickly. So between the climate and the earthquakes, we have come up with putting a basic ply right the way around the building, and the bracing units are just picked up on that and nailed off. So whether it's for climate or whether it's for bracing would just depend on the nailing pattern that we nail off on. And that again happens inside as well with the internal walls with the gypsum board. We've also moved to a much lighter roof structure. We use a lot of corrugated iron, light tin type roofs rather than concrete tiles. Trying to keep the buildings as light as possible. Yeah.
When these improvements come out, so you mentioned some of the new technologies you have with the the concrete that's able to kind of shift and move, and the new roofing materials, things like that. Obviously, better long term. But for the builder themselves, so for you guys, do you guys have to change a lot of your plans that you've been doing things the same way for a long time to adapt to some of these new technologies that are out there? If so, what does that process look like? Is it slowly over time, or is it, as soon as they come out with something new, you guys are immediately implementing it kind of into your build process?
I guess the biggest thing has been that everything that happens in the house these days has to be shown on the plans, the blueprints, before the house can be started. So where we would have used to build with five pages of plans, we've now got 40 odd pages of different sections through different parts of the house that cover every single little piece of the puzzle, you could say. And so you become really, really good at deciphering plans, because you've got to build it exactly how it's drawn, rather than knowing the building code and just carrying on. That would be the main thing as far as our changes are concerned. We basically have to follow their lead. Whatever the plan says, we've got to build, or we can go for an amendment, but we have to show that amendment meets the building code.
Are those dictated by, in New Zealand, the building code by the actual government, or is it?
Yeah, it's pushed by the government. So the legislation that goes through is all we have to follow. Yeah, we don't have a choice as to whether we leave things out or put things in. We can always go better than the building code, but
right. Yeah, they set the floor. And I just imagine from like your customer's perspective, I mean, this is something that is so common in the area. It's to your advantage to market yourself as someone who their structures will stand up against earthquakes and are built safely for their families, right? I mean, do you guys look at it from that perspective ever? Like when a customer comes to you, like, do you include this in your sales process?
Not really. The issue around all this is that we get given a plan, usually that meets the requirement, and then we're pricing from there.
Gotcha.
So it's not something that we can offer because it's all covered in the drawings usually, and you just hope that you don't miss anything. Otherwise, you're fighting a losing battle on the money front.
It's always that balance.
Yeah, sure is. But I guess the thing is for us is that we've been lucky enough that with Luke and Nicola running the show, that they're always forward thinking. So that's how we got linked into Buildertrend, I guess. It happened because we needed something a little bit more than just doing the same old.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds like you guys are, doing a really good job of kind of setting yourselves apart, as a builder in New Zealand. Another question I had when you talked a little bit about forward thinking was just like kind of project timelines, and obviously, something that we're facing in the States, everyone is talking about is just material shortages. How has that kind of been like for you guys in New Zealand? How have project timelines kind of had to, get moved back with, the purchasing maybe taking a little bit longer than it normally does?
Oh, yeah, we've got the same problems. A lot of our products are all imported, and like we're pretty lucky in the timber department, but with such good money being found by exporting our timber, we're second in line with all that. So it's been a long process. The old pandemic. Although we've been very lucky there, but we're still all wandering around having a great time partying because we're not really affected by it. But it's really cut through trying to get some materials. Like we've got one job here at the moment where we're waiting for some cedar board and batten as a cladding, and it's a 3-month waiting list. So
wow.
When I say 3 months, that's to order it. That slows the job right down, because we would be looking at having it on, like in 8 weeks, say. So as far as that, at the moment, we're still managing to keep the materials coming through within a time frame that the house would be built. So, but if that goes out any further, we'll be like houses are just going to take longer and longer and longer.
So you mentioned New Zealand obviously has a higher proportion of timber. In the United States, we were seeing lumber increases by 350%. I mean, absolutely insane. Were you kind of insulated from that, or did you also still see kind of the lumber price increases?
Yeah, we've got exactly the same. They haven't gone up quite that much yet, but every month they're going up, and container loads of materials. The price for a container these days has gone from something like $5,000 to ship a container in, and it's now up around the $15,000 mark. So you can see that that just affects every single little bit of material that you use on a building site.
How's your demand on the market? In the United States, it hasn't really slowed down. People are still building even with these inflated prices. Have you guys also still seen a similar increase in the people who are still willing to pay those prices?
Yeah, like we just can't keep up with the work that we've got at the moment.
Interesting.
And it's like all the earthquake type material work is virtually finished now, and we've now moved on to new housing, people shifting around. The plans that are here you could price are just incredible, but you just can't do everything. So we're able to pick some good jobs, and we've been getting them. So that certainly helps the old wheel go round, you could say.
Absolutely. So, I mean, throughout this interview, you've mentioned a few things. You have insane demand right now. You have purchasing delays, increased lumber prices, earthquakes to deal with. How is
check that box?
Yeah, a lot of stuff to account for outside of the normal kind of standard build process. How have you guys kind of been utilizing Buildertrend to help with some of those processes that may be a little bit more difficult than normal, to ensure that you and your company can continue rolling down the path that you're on?
Well, the scheduling's been the best one for us. We can add a spot when we order, so we know it's coming in and hopefully like in 3 months or a month, and so we can put 2 points on the Buildertrend calendar, you could say, scheduling, and then we can work back from there as to whereabouts each part of the job's going to be, and hope that the material will turn up on time, which is another problem too. But yeah, definitely the scheduling, the time clocks are just fantastic for us. We can just clock on and swap jobs. It just means that every time we do something, it gets logged onto the right job rather than just guessing it or doing paperwork at the end of the week. You've got everything on hand.
How big is your team? You said you had 10 employees. So are you subbing out most of your work as well for the actual construction process?
No, we do just about everything.
Really? All internal?
Yep. We do all the concrete floors, all the framing. The framework we usually get pre-nailed, but so they come as made-up frames. But we do all the carpentry work, all the external cladding, internal cladding, all the finishing, even put the showers in.
That is, you do it all. That's pretty unique for a new home builder.
Yeah. We've got a good bunch of subcontractors as well. So the electricians and the plumbers, they do their thing. But yeah, we'll even put on roofs if we have to. The main thing here is that being such a small area, we don't have a lot of the trades that you can flick it out to other people. So we've just got to do it ourselves, or we just can't get it finished. So it's good for the apprentices. They learn heaps of stuff because of that, and it just makes it so much easier for us not having to chase around trying to find other subcontractors.
Absolutely. And doing the work yourself with an expert like Bill Gray, obviously your houses are going to get built up to the standard that you've come to expect.
Oh, I just make sure that Luke gets coffee every now and then, and all the boys have got a bit of material in front of them, and everyone's happy. Yeah,
you're good to go. Well, Bill, we're getting close to that time here. Just want to thank you again for coming on and speaking to some of the challenges that you face. I think this was a super informative episode for me, definitely, and hopefully all of our listeners too. So thank you again, Bill.
No worries at all. Thanks very much. It's been, I'll let you know when the next earthquake happens.
And we'll make sure to schedule our trip around that.
Yeah. We'll try and line that up.
All right. Great to talk, guys.
Thanks so much, Bill.
Have a good one.
Well, we just had Bill Gray on to talk about the construction process down in New Zealand. At the beginning of the show, we kind of asked about number of earthquakes. Turns out it was a much larger issue than I had even realized.
I feel like everything that he said in that episode was kind of took me aback. And I was like, wow, I didn't realize, how impactful, how many earthquakes were happening constantly, but also just like how devastating they are. And listening to his horror story about being, trapped in his house during one and watching concrete move up, 200 millimeters at a time is just, really, really hard to picture.
Well, and even off air, he was talking to us about how just the entire island moved 4 meters.
Right.
And just the impact that it can have.
Yeah, he was saying how, there were some arguments over, boundaries and, housing lines and things like that. Zach goes, no, like the entire island moved.
Everybody just moved 4 feet to the right. That's yours now. Super interesting stuff. Bill also really kind of got into the same circumstances of the pandemic. Obviously, international pandemic has international results. Not that surprising. I mean, I'm sure. But New Zealand was insulated. They didn't have the level of shutdowns that we had, or at least for the extended period of time. So I kind of thought maybe we're insulated from that as well. Obviously, import costs still make it hard. And even with their resources of having timber, it ended up still having a broader impact on their bottom line. And Buildertrend is still fulfilling the needs of our Australian and New Zealand clients, just like our U.S. clients.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was really interesting to hear him talk about, just staying in front of some of these challenges that they're facing, the 3-month delays that they're having with some of their orders. But then also just like how they're getting in front of, safety with these new materials, the honeycomb pattern concrete and, the special roofing and things like that. I thought that was really interesting with just how quickly they can adapt to, new technology and ensure that their houses are being built as safe as possible.
That was super interesting. Just you think about the minds on, okay, how do we prevent these things from shifting too much? Let's go look at nature. What works?
Right.
How are the things that just the land can teach us about structural integrity and modeling after that.
And I would love to get, and you mentioned this off air too, but obviously, earthquakes in New Zealand builders aren't the only types of builders that are facing natural disasters. I'd love to get some people that, have to deal with, flooding and hurricanes, people that have to deal with forest fires and tornadoes. This episode was really just kind of eye-opening to me on how off the beaten path some of these builders have to be in order to account for these natural disasters. So hopefully in the future we'll have some different types of builders to talk about some other challenges that they face.
You never know. We're going to go on the building code.
Yeah, hopefully to New Zealand for our first off-road.
Let's manifest that one into happening.
Yeah, I don't know. Our track record isn't that great. But
how we're 31st then New Zealand.
Yeah, we'll get there eventually. Thanks again for listening. Remember to rate, review, subscribe. Check us out on Facebook at The Building Crew if you want to be a part. Always feel free to reach out. Other than that, I'm Charlie Birtwhistle.
Zach Witovich.
This is The Building Code.